Droplets of water shiver, rolling slowly down off of their green beds. The blades of grass bend under the shifting weight. The dew moves with the coming dawn, trying desperately to hide from the rays of the sun. They don't make it. New light hits them, splitting into 7 as it does. All along the verdant lawn, spots of color explode outward. To any eye sharp enough to notice, the ground has turned into countless pinpoint rainbows. The sight, sadly, doesn't last. The rising heat takes hold of any droplet not quick enough to hide. They shrink under the sun's grip. Vapor slowly rising into the sky. The air ripples as water is freed from its earthly bonds. On these rising currents drifts a large bird. Amber orbs perched atop a sharp, curved beak. They dart this way and that, looking for breakfast. Now that the lawn is still, it can perceive any movement. Talons flex hungrily as it lazily floats above the world. A soft buzzing drones over the now motionless yard. Looking for a flower amongst already ripened berries, a bee bumbles along. It had found pollen here earlier in the year and was back to check for more. However, it had done its job quite well, and now all that could be found was fresh fruit. A rustle in the grass causes the hawk to dive. It lands with a thud, the full force of its plunge burying wicked talons into its prey. A few flaps and it is off, a rabbit clutched underneath it. There is no remorse for this act from the hunter. A nest full of screeching chicks demands to be fed. It flies back over the cabin, bringing the fresh meat back to its young. A small girl stands on the porch, looking in awe at the retreating bird. Too young to really understand what she had just seen, she dashes out into the late morning sun, taking a wide course around her home. Behind the cabin was a large patch of black earth, devoid of any grass. A man and 2 older children were bent over, careful not to step on any of the small green shoots coming out of the ground, their steps leaving deep footprints in the soft soil. They were inspecting each seedling coming up in their respective rows. Fingers reached out and pulled plants gently aside, selecting the undesirable ones and removing them from the tilled earth, leaving only the growing vegetables. The girl, sprinting, called to her father as she approached. All 3 look up from their task. The man's face breaks into a grin. She entered the garden, slowing her pace. She picked her way carefully through the remaining plants. She had learned last year to be careful. When she reached the man, she proudly exclaimed her sighting of the hawk. The man lifted her up, resting her in the crook of his arm. Praising her sharp eyes, he gave her a tight hug. She burst into a giggle before forcing her face into a pout, imploring her father to come play. He took a moment and looked around the garden. The weeding was almost done. Then he turned his eyes to his other 2 children, who had barely masked desire on their faces. He waved them all off, telling them he would finish the chore. Their faces beamed. Joyful children dashed off through the grass. He called after them to be careful. He gave a proud, contented smile. There would be more work for them this afternoon, and even more tomorrow. There always was this time of year, but for the moment, they could enjoy the weather.